After seeing Jason pick on one of his classmates, Ben decides to stand up to him and knocks the bully to the ground. After the fall, Jason gets his friends to help him catch Ben, but the boy manages to escape and hide in the men's restroom. Knowing his target is hiding inside one of the stalls, Jason starts opening them one by one. But instead of finding Ben, he comes across Leonard and is confused when he realizes that Ben has simply disappeared. A month earlier, Ben had enrolled at Eric Noodle School after moving to the city with his mother. The first person to approach him was Kenny. Because Ben is shy and introverted, he has always had a hard time making friends, and it doesn't take long for Jason to make him his new target. In recent years, Liz, Ben's mother, started a relationship with Max's father, Phil. After the two got married, the four of them became a family. But one morning, when Ben goes downstairs for breakfast, he realizes that his mother doesn't recognize him. Confused, he looks in the mirror and is shocked to see that he now looks exactly like Kenny. Panicking, the boy runs away from home and heads straight to school. When he finds Max, Ben tries to explain what happened, but she doesn't believe him until she sees Kenny walking through the halls. Suddenly, the school bell rings, and Max tells her brother to stay hidden until the end of class so nobody notices that there are two Kennys walking around the school. Meanwhile, worried about her son's disappearance, Liz goes to the school to talk to Max. However, the girl tells her that she doesn't know where Ben is. Concerned, Phil decides to call the police to help search for him. Ben panics when he realizes he can't go home, so with nowhere else to go, he takes a walk through the park to figure out what to do. There, he meets Carter. To his surprise, the young woman already knows his true identity and helps him understand that he has mutant abilities. According to Carter, this will happen again, but once Ben learns to control his powers, everything will be fine. After saying this, she disappears, and Ben eventually falls asleep in the park. Hours later, he wakes up in the middle of a storm and realizes that his body has returned to normal. The boy immediately runs through the streets and is eventually found by Detective Darren, who takes him home. With Max's help, Ben comes up with a good excuse to explain where he has been and then goes to his room after dinner. Later that night, when Detective Darren gets home, he sees a picture of his daughter, Carter, and his eyes fill with tears. He still misses her every single day. Over the next few weeks, Ben asks Max to help him transform again. However, no matter what he tries, his powers won't activate. After countless failed attempts, Ben finally gives up and starts learning how to deal with the frustration of being a normal boy again. One morning, just as Liz is about to take the kids to school, Detective Darren shows up and asks to speak with Ben in private. The detective shows him a photo and asks if he has ever seen the symbol in it before. Ben says no. That evening, Phil and Liz ask Ben what he and Darren talked about, but the boy says it was nothing important. He then learns that Carter is the detective's daughter, and that Darren raised her alone after his wife died. Meanwhile, to make sure Jason leaves her half-brother Owen alone, Max makes a deal with him and gives him her favorite headphones as payment. During a break at school, Ben asks Max about Carter and learns that the girl was never seen again after being sent to boarding school. Ben then reveals that he saw her in the park a few days earlier, leaving Max shocked. At the end of class, Ben and Max are walking home when they see Jason choosing another target. This time, he is picking on Owen. Ben gets angry and decides to step in, but before he can do anything, Max notices that her brother's appearance has changed. He now looks exactly like Owen. Suddenly, Max receives a message from their mother saying that she needs to find her. So Ben decides to run back to the park, hoping he can meet Carter again. However, when he arrives, he is surprised to find Detective Darren there. The detective reveals that he hasn't seen his daughter in a long time. According to Darren, 2 years earlier, a massive storm hit the city. While he was out trying to rescue survivors, he saw Carter running straight toward the hurricane. Soon after, the storm disappeared. Carter then told him that she had to leave because her life was in danger. Darren had no choice but to let her go so she could stay safe, and he hasn't seen her since. After hearing the story, Ben realizes that he is starting to return to his original form and quickly heads home. That evening, Liz takes Max to a store to choose a dress for the school's spring dance, while Ben stays home to cook dinner with Phil. During their conversation, Ben suddenly realizes that his voice has changed and now sounds exactly like his stepfather's. Luckily, Liz and Max arrive home just in time, and Ben rushes to his room. After calming down, he manages to get his normal voice back. Phil then asks Ben to take Max her dinner. The girl comes home upset because she feels like Liz is trying to replace her mother. Because of this, Max decides to eat alone in her room and tells Ben that even though her mother isn't around as much as she should be, she doesn't want a replacement. The next morning at school, Ben walks with Owen to his locker because Jason always leaves rotten eggs inside it. But this time, Ben is shocked to find the rotten eggs in his own locker. Thinking Ben was responsible for switching them, Jason attacks him. Max quickly steps in to defend her brother and throws the rotten eggs onto Jason's clothes. However, one of the teachers catches her, and she gets sent to the principal's office. The principal scolds Max and says he will call her father that evening. Wanting to keep her from getting into trouble, Ben waits for the call and answers his cell phone. He then changes his voice to sound like Phil and talks to the principal himself. The next morning, Carter visits Ben and scolds him for wasting his powers on pointless things. When he sees her, Ben asks why she keeps running away. Carter finally explains that the storm that almost destroyed the entire city was caused by a mutant. The truth is that the storm was her fault. Yates Skirk had been trying to capture Carter so he could steal her powers. But before Ben can ask any more questions, Carter tells him that he needs to prove he can be trusted. Until then, she will continue using her invisibility to keep an eye on him. When the weekend arrives, Max goes to her mother's house, so Phil decides to take Liz and Ben out for lunch. At the food court, the family runs into Jason and his mother, who invite them to sit together since the two boys are classmates. What Phil and Liz don't realize is that Jason is the same bully who has been tormenting their son at school. Ben is amazed by how easily Jason pretends to be a nice kid whenever adults are around. The next day, Max and Ben see Jason knock Owen's lunch to the ground. They try to record the incident, but they are too slow to grab their phones. When Jason runs into the changing room, Ben follows him and tries to calm him down. But suddenly, Ben realizes that he is starting to transform again. He leaves the room, and a few minutes later, he meets Max. She is shocked when she realizes that her brother has turned into the person he hates the most. Ben then comes up with an idea. He decides to act like Jason and asks Max to help him record some scenes. That way, he can finally show his mother who Jason really is. However, Max doesn't like the idea. She tells Ben that using his powers to torment other kids is the wrong thing to do. That afternoon, while walking through the school halls, Ben is suddenly confronted by Owen, who wants revenge for all the times he has been attacked. After being punched, Ben collapses and wakes up in the hospital where his mother is taking care of him. To his surprise, Liz reveals that ever since she saw Jason, she suspected he was the bully who broke her son's camera. She also insists that he never cheated on her. Suddenly, Ben notices that his arm is starting to return to normal. Afraid that his mother will see the transformation, he quickly runs away. When he gets home, Ben finds Max, who shows him a video that is spreading across the internet about the massive storm that happened 2 years earlier. After enlarging the image, Max discovers that there was someone else inside the hurricane. Ben starts wondering who the woman could be, so the next morning the two siblings decide to investigate. They return to the place where the video was recorded, but their investigation is interrupted when Max gets a message from her mother and decides to meet her at the bookstore. That day, Max turns 13. Julia tells her that she's excited to celebrate at her favorite restaurant, but she also makes it clear that Ben and his mother aren't invited. Later that evening, when Max leaves the house to meet her parents, Ben waits for his mother to get home from work. He then invites Liz to the same restaurant Julia booked for dinner, without realizing that Max will be celebrating her birthday there. Liz takes Ben to the restaurant, and a few minutes later, Max arrives. Ben realizes that his plan has worked, and all 5 of them sit down for dinner together. While the adults are talking, Ben and Max get up and pretend they need to use the bathroom. But the truth is that they are going to investigate the apartment where the woman in the photo lived 2 years earlier. When they enter the building, Ben sees a boy leaving with his family and realizes that they are moving out. The boy ignores them, and Ben sneaks into the apartment to find out what the woman was looking at through the window. Max looks around and realizes that the apartment was recently rented because it is still filled with boxes. Suddenly, Enzo's parents arrive, forcing the two siblings to hide. To get them out of trouble, Ben transforms into Enzo and distracts his parents while Max sneaks outside. Once she gets out, Ben follows her and returns to the restaurant, where he shows up at the table with a birthday cake. That night, when Max gets home, she finds a birthday card from Carter under her pillow. Inside is a newspaper article containing the name of the woman they saw in the window. After receiving a professional photography kit from his stepfather, Ben decides to create a photo wall with all the clues he and Max have collected so far. Later that afternoon, they take a break for ice cream. While they are in the kitchen, Phil notices Vivian Kennedy's picture in the newspaper. According to him, the woman is Darren's late wife and Carter's mother. After discovering this, the siblings decide to talk to Detective Darren. Ben transforms into Leonard to avoid raising suspicion, while Max helps him convince Darren to participate in an interview for a supposed history project. As Ben asks the detective a few questions, Max sneaks into Carter's old room to search for clues that might help their investigation. She finds an old notebook belonging to Carter and takes the opportunity to photograph it, but then Ben is exposed. Darren discovers that the boy is also a mutant, and he asks Ben to transform into Carter because all he wants is to see his daughter one more time. A short time later, while Ben and Max are riding their bikes home, they notice that a biker is following them. Max becomes suspicious, but the siblings decide to go to Morgan's house and convince her to let them inside. When Morgan discovers that Ben also has powers, she reveals that she can fly and finally tells them what really happened the night of the storm. Yates had arrived in town looking for revenge. He had once been one of Vivian Kennedy's students, but he was extremely arrogant and refused to learn from her. Because of his attitude, Vivian eventually expelled him, and Yates was furious. What nobody expected was that Yates would come after Carter to avenge the daughter of his former teacher. Morgan and a group of students joined forces to stop him, but Yates was more powerful than ever. He threw all of them into the eye of the hurricane. When Carter saw Morgan being attacked, she unleashed a massive burst of power that stopped the storm and took away Yates's abilities. After telling them the story, Morgan asks the siblings to go home and return to their normal lives as teenagers. She tells them that when Ben is ready, she will contact them again. Before leaving, Max shows Morgan the photo and newspaper clipping that Carter left under her pillow on her birthday. As the siblings leave, Morgan wonders why Carter would do that. However, Carter replies to Morgan's message and says that she wasn't the one who gave Max the old newspaper clipping. Hours later that night, Morgan receives an unexpected visitor. Yates has come to see her so he can finish what he started. The next day after school, Ben and Max return to their photo studio. Suddenly, Phil shows up. When he sees Vivian's picture on the wall, he realizes that something is wrong and leaves looking frightened. The following morning at school, Ben sees his sister being humiliated by one of the popular girls. He tells Max that the next time something like this happens, she should stand up for herself. But Max would rather avoid a fight, so Ben decides to handle it himself. After transforming into Max, he goes to Danielle and gets revenge on her. Just then, Julia arrives to pick up her daughter from school. She has planned to take Max shopping for a new dress for the spring dance. Unable to get out of the situation, Ben goes with Julia to the store. On the way, he contacts Max and tells her what happened. A few minutes later, Max arrives at the store and enters the fitting room where Ben is hiding. Furious, she tells him that she doesn't need him to defend her and that he shouldn't use his powers to control or mess with other people. After a brief argument, Ben leaves and goes home. Once he realizes how upset Max is because of what he did, Ben understands that he made a serious mistake and starts thinking about how he can make things right. That afternoon, Ben returns to the park to look for Carter. When he finds her, he discovers that she is in trouble. Yates stole Morgan's powers and then used her identity to get close to Wyatt. As a result, Wyatt also ended up losing his abilities. Carter asks Ben to meet her at the mall the next day. Meanwhile, Ben tries to make things right with Max, but she refuses to listen to him. The next morning, as planned, Carter meets Ben at the mall so she can help him train his powers. While they are there, they notice a suspicious young man. When Carter looks at his wrist, she realizes that he is wearing the bracelets that belong to her friends. She immediately runs away, but the man corners her. Worried about Carter, Ben goes after her and is about to be attacked by Alistair Morris. Just in time, Carter appears and uses her powers to make Alistair invisible. Thanks to Carter, Ben manages to escape. After getting him somewhere safe, she leaves. Meanwhile, Darren investigates the mall's security footage and discovers that Ben was involved in the incident. The detective decides to talk to him. Darren tells Ben that he is in danger and that he wants to help protect him, but Ben refuses, insisting that there is nothing Darren can do to keep him safe. That afternoon, Ben meets Carter at the park and follows her to a warehouse where Morgan is hiding. Morgan explains that after the siblings left her house, Yates returned and stole her powers. She reveals that Yates had studied with Rhonda and Wyatt, but he was never someone who followed the rules. When Yates discovered that his rebellious behavior would prevent him from graduating, he decided to take action and killed Vivian. He then went after Carter because he wanted to steal her powers. Vivian had given Carter an ability that was more powerful than anything the other mutants possessed. Everyone believed that Yates had lost his powers during the storm, but they were wrong. He is now more powerful than ever and plans to steal the abilities of every other mutant. After learning the truth, Ben leaves because he knows he isn't strong enough to stop Yates. Meanwhile, after Vivian was attacked, she spent her final days in the hospital with her daughter. While Vivian was sleeping, Carter received a mysterious gift. Elsewhere, Darren investigates the identity of the person responsible for the attack at the mall. He discovers that Alistair is an inmate who has been held at the city penitentiary for several years. That afternoon, the detective goes to the prison to question him. Darren shows Alistair a photo taken by the mall's security cameras a few days earlier. Alistair is confused when he sees the image, but Darren explains that someone is trying to impersonate him. He then asks Alistair to help him find Yates. However, when Alistair hears Yates' name, he reveals that the two of them are actually good friends. He explains that Yates once sacrificed himself to save him and gave Alistair his powers. Because of this, Alistair believes that one day Yates will surely repay him. After his brief visit to the prison, Darren goes to meet Morgan and gives her Alistair's complete file, since Yates has been using his identity to hide. The next morning, while Ben is walking to school, Carter surprises him again. She explains that, besides Ben, Yates is the only other shapeshifter she has ever met. Because of this, Carter believes Ben's powers could be useful in defeating Yates. Her plan is for Ben to transform into Carter and use himself as bait to lure Yates into a trap. But Ben quickly realizes that Carter is planning to use him as bait, which makes him even more upset with her. Morgan then decides to ask Max for help. She tells the girl to convince her brother to cooperate, because otherwise, Carter and the other mutants could all be eliminated. That afternoon, Max talks to Ben and manages to convince him to at least hear Morgan's plan. When Ben arrives at the warehouse, Morgan explains that Darren's file helped them discover where Yates is hiding. Their plan is to break into his house and use Ben's powers to distract him, while the real Carter captures him and takes away his abilities. Besides being able to turn invisible, Carter also has the power she inherited from her mother. If everything goes according to plan, Morgan and the other mutants will get their powers back, and Yates will never be able to threaten them again. The next morning, the group breaks into the Morris family's home and starts looking for Yates, but they soon realize that he isn't there. The group then takes the opportunity to explain everything to Alistair's parents. They admit that they have no idea how their son became such a bad person. Since their first attempt to find Yates fails, Ben decides to continue with his normal life and goes to school. During lunch, he talks with his friends about the spring dance happening that weekend. He also learns that his mother and Phil have volunteered to work as chaperones at the event. Early Saturday evening, Liz and Phil welcome some guests into their home for a small celebration before heading to the salon. While everyone is enjoying themselves, Ben goes to his photography studio to send Max a message. He suspects that Yates may be trying to infiltrate the party. Just then, Phil shows up and starts confronting Ben. It doesn't take long for the boy to realize that this isn't really Phil. Yates is disguised as him. Ben tries to fight back, but Yates easily immobilizes him, causing the boy to lose consciousness. Yates then steals Ben's appearance and heads to the school to find the other children. When Ben wakes up and realizes he is alone in the house, he immediately rushes to the party room, knowing that his family could be in danger. Meanwhile, Yates arranges to meet Morgan and the other mutants in the school hallways. Just as he is about to steal Carter's powers, Ben arrives and attacks him. But Ben quickly realizes that he isn't strong enough to defeat Yates, so he transforms into Carter, hoping to confuse his enemy. At that moment, Detective Darren appears. When he sees that his daughter is in danger, he attacks Yates, but the villain strikes him in the knee, leaving him unable to stand. Terrified, Ben runs out of the school, but Yates throws him through a window. Outside, Ben finds Max and asks her to help him stop Yates. Max puts on her brother's jacket and runs toward the gym. She distracts Yates long enough for Ben and Carter to trap him. Once Carter finally manages to touch Yates, she uses the power she inherited from her mother to restore the abilities that Yates had stolen from the other mutants. After the battle, Ben and Max run to reunite with the rest of their family. Meanwhile, Carter is relieved that she can finally be close to her father without worrying that Yates will come after her again. Now that Yates has been captured, he will be brought to trial. Morgan also thanks Ben for everything he did to help them. That night, while Ben is resting after the battle, he suddenly feels an electric current running through his entire body. The boy realizes that something is wrong with his powers.